banged up. I'm gonna have to send him a mouse next. Frankly, I'm doing the Streams for Dreams by myself. It's good to funding Streams for Dreams, one broke bastard at a time. This is ridiculous. And they tell me I'm a piece of shit. Oh God, okay. Our featured women streamers will be doing what they do best on the front page all month long. Gregory, can we play some clips of some of the best and most popular female streamers? We need to see what they're putting out there. This is some great content. These women are inspirational. Nothing says fucking Women's History Month like a girl painting her tits. That is it, baby. Empowerment. Good God, all this shit that's on Twitch. Or you could watch a girl basically watch other people's content on YouTube and talk about it while using ad block and then telling anyone who watches her shit but doesn't sub or donate to her that they're fucking leeches. This is just like, the positivity is off the charts.
And then you leech.
Female DSP is real. I've been saying this shit for years. I was saying, if DSP was a girl, no one would have a problem with him. He would do so well on Twitch. The reason why everyone hates DSP is because he's a man, but he acts like a Twitch thought.
So what I think is this. Quite frankly, those who watch my videos on YouTube take them for granted. They say, oh man, Phil's been here for 10 years. Phil's gonna be around no matter what. He's been through highs and lows, he's been through ups and downs, and no matter what, Phil's just gonna be here, so I don't need to do anything, I'll just keep watching the videos. And I think that's the wrong attitude. You guys here on stream see. I think the people who watch on YouTube don't really see that. They feel disconnected, and therefore all these videos will be here no matter what. And I think what needs to happen is we need to have a change here, where people who are going to continue to watch on YouTube need to step up.
And then you leech.
And in particular, the one way that they can really do this is via pledging to my Patreon. How is it that every video that I'm putting up on KOTV right now, okay, is getting over 1,000 views, but I have under 200 patrons?
That's the reality of it, period. If you're watching Twitch as a non-donating, non-sub, you are leeching.
Let's go to the 1,000 Dreamers Fund. That sounds like a great thing there. We're gonna fund some dreams, specifically only females. Because Lord knows how hard it is for women on Twitch. The most fucking... calm down, dude. Let it be cool, bro. Remember, we can't flip off the handle. We get in trouble. 1,000 Dreamers Fund kicks off Twitch charity event to celebrate women broadcasters through Women's History Month. So these female broadcasters that paint their nips, they count. This is good quality content. Quality. The article reads as 1,000 Dreams Fund is a national nonprofit that provides microgrants to young women in their career goals. It is extended to announce the second year of Streams of Dreams, Streams for Dreams, # event in honor of Women's History Month. When I think about Amelia Earhart, I thank God she would have come back. She would have survived that plane flight if she just painted her tits. In partnership with Twitch, their community, 1DF goal is to raise $50,000 by March 31st, with all proceeds raised going to the one Twitch broadcast. Get it? Broadcast. It's progressive. Grant program launching in 2018, which was last year. You remember I flew off the handle last year. That's probably how a lot of you motherfuckers found me. I lost my shit when I saw this grant. $2,000 per semester to female streamers to celebrate Women's History Month. Women's History Month is starting in March, and Twitch have partnered. March and Twitch have partnered together. Apparently the month of March is working with Twitch. Why don't I have a job as a journalist? I can fuck up like this. Where's my paycheck? Take 45 fucking thousand. Specifically created for female broadcasters on Twitch, over $30,000 has been granted out to 1DF so far. Talented female content creators across the globe. There's a lot of fucking talented content creators, and the ones that are featured on Twitch's main page are the most creative of all content creators. When you look at Twitch's front page, you see those girls sitting on their asses doing nothing and making a lot of money. It's amazing. Oh my God, I'm trying like hell to get through this and like maintain my composure. It's not working. I feel like, you ever hear the Rage Against the Machine? That's me right now. At Twitch, quote, "We are always working to build both an inclusive and diverse brand, empowering our creators to make their own entertainment with their communities." Yeah, we've seen some very creative content creators, female ones specifically. You know, nothing like ASMR, girls rubbing little plastic ears. I don't give a fuck. Hatsune Miku has more fucking personality than the streamer. Someone help me. Ah, God, it's like when you see that little Asian girl work those plastic ears, you think to yourself, she's the Van Gogh of ASMR. You know what's sad? This is off the cuff, but you know, when this generation's gone, like 200 years from now, they're gonna look back at this and just go, wow, what a shitty time to be alive. You know, like, we had no great artists, we had no great arbiters, we had no great philosophers. We just had an era of like social media celebrities all over the fucking place, famous for absolutely nothing with little to no talent. Said Alyssa Sweetman, charity program manager at Twitch. Of course, it'd be a woman spearheading this shitty ass operation. Let's help Guy. No, it's a patriarchy. Okay. By partnering with 1000 Dreams Fund once again, we are elevating the importance of gender equality during Women's History Month. Where's the gender equality on Twitch? I'll wait. You can tell me. I'll wait. Because there isn't any. There's no gender equality on Twitch. Here's how it rolls. If you aren't like amazingly good at games as a guy, no one gives a shit about you on Twitch. Unless you've already built a following outside of Twitch as a man, no one cares about you on that platform. No joke. It is hard. Like, it's hard for both sexes, but it's real hard for men. No joke. Cut this shit. It's a lot like life. They sit here trying to pretend, oh, it's gender equality because we gotta make sure that girls have an equal chance on Twitch. Are you for real? Queen, are you for real? A boat is sinking. It's Titanic. Women and children first on the boat. And a woman is pushing out of the way screaming, gender equality! And you know, you fall off the barge and freeze to fucking death before you can say, fuck me. And how is like gender equality, quotation marks, and streaming with women promoting Women's History Month? I think if anything, Twitch really tarnishes shit for women. To highlight our mission in helping creators make a living entertaining and educating their fans. On what planet is there anything educational on Twitch outside of rebroadcasts of Mr. Rogers, which ain't educational if you're over fucking 10, or rebroadcasts of Bob Ross?
Holy fuck knuckles, I am high as a kite right now.
It's like, cut this shit. What is educational on there? Because most of the girls that paint their body ain't teaching you how to paint. And I quote, the 1DF grant represents hope for female streamers on Twitch, says Ed Sarah Cat, whatever. Represents hope for female streamers on Twitch. This must be a girl who got a grant. Out of 700 chicks, basically, I was gonna say people, it's all women. Out of 700 women, this chick was number 50 in the grant winner. I took some of the time to check out some of these grant winners. And when I say took the time, I checked two, actually. Sabra Cat 26 was funded. She's the one who just gave a quote for the funding thing. Just checking this one. Here's her page. I'm looking at all videos, and she doesn't really have many archive videos up, which is weird, you know? Like, what did they fund her for, to be honest? Like, what did she do with it? I don't see any major hustle here, if you know what I'm saying. I think someone who's trying to pursue Twitch as a career would have a bit more grind in them. There was another girl who won one of these streams with Dreams thing. It's Deets or whatever. I'm looking at her thing, checking out past broadcasts, and yeah, you know, not that many. And it's relatively somewhat recent, 6 days. Like, so they stream every few days in between. So this girl has done a stream 6 days ago, 6 days ago, 11 days ago, and not too much has been left up here in the past 2 months, which means she streams sporadically. What's the whole point of giving grants to people who aren't going to pursue streaming on Twitch? That doesn't make sense at all. You know, I'm gonna have to do a shout out here for Zetsudo. This motherfucker is streaming on the regular and predominantly for longer periods than some of the women that got granted. But since he's a young, he's black and half Asian, Filipino, I don't know. But since pretty much he's black and he has been caught. But since it's like this young black kid doing this shit, he's like 19, 20, and he's putting in the effort, but why isn't he getting any sort of grant? You know what I'm saying? I see him all over the place on Twitch. I see him on Twitter. I see him trying to get exposure. I see him actually putting effort into it, but there's no grants for men who do this. But then you give some grants to girls, and it's kind of like wishy-washy. Like, what the fuck? If I was pursuing Twitch as my career, I'd be at it every day. You see my YouTube channel. There's something uploaded every day, if not every other day, depending on how long the damn video is. Like, for real, what the fuck? But whatever. I'm just being a toxic male, I guess. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Zetsudo's working from a real cheap laptop. So yeah. He's putting in the effort, even though what he's using is kind of garbage. So there. I don't want to hear someone going, well, those girls had not the best setup. This motherfucker's on a real old laptop that can barely play anything above low settings, alright? I got nothing. Play some clips. The fact that this even exists in a time where you can go on Twitch and there's literally a Russian girl right now who dances on cam. That's all she does. She dances around and has a goal for $200,000 to buy a house, and she has $120,000 raised already. She doesn't play any games. She's playing clips off of YouTube. She didn't even buy Dance Dance Revolution. The bitch doesn't need a streaming setup. She just bought a webcam. And you motherfuckers are sitting here telling me we need this program to help women because it's so hard. If you ever needed proof that it's not hard for chicks on Twitch, look no further. What the fuck is this? You want to see hard? Dude, I wish you could find this kid. Like a month ago, I was watching Twitch, and it's this fat kid. He was working his tits off. That boy was shaking and baking, baby. You would have thought he was possessed by James Brown. The motherfucker was on the skillet. He was cooking, mama. He was playing Andrew WK's Let's Get the Party Going. I hate that song. But you know what? This kid was so magnetic. He was frantic. He was amazing. The Rumble from Down Under. This motherfucker was dancing around, trying to do exercise, falling into the wall, almost vomiting on camera, picking up his chair and screaming about fitness and exercise. It was the funniest shit I ever saw. I can't find him anymore. It was like a fluke I found him because I was cruising the Just Chat extension at 2 in the morning, working on Billy videos. This motherfucker deserves this grant. They're not gonna give him shit. He's the most entertaining thing I've seen on Twitch in years. And I'm there, baby. I'm willing to say this kid's got more charisma than me. He was better than Dr. Disrespect has ever been. The only time Dr. Disrespect was remotely interesting is when someone shot at his house and he got on camera and started acting like he was gonna kick somebody's ass. You really gotta do something. You would have ran outside and chased down that car. Now you might go, Gundam, fuck you, and I'll say fuck you too. I've lived through 3 shootouts. One of them, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The other 2, I had it coming. East LA in the 90s was no joke. That kid ain't gonna get a grant, that poor butterball entertainer. This kid was the reincarnation of Chris Farley. He ain't getting shit. But we're gonna make sure that we come up with some money for grants to help women in Twitch, a site that pretty much caters to females. Like, girls can be toxic as shit on the site and not get banned until like they cross the last line. Like the last girl who's been banned for being super toxic was what? That little Russian girl? Elena Live or something? I don't know what the fuck her name is. But she was an asshole for a while, and then she finally got nailed for something stupid. Like, I agree with her. There's only 2 genders. You can go run around and give me that "this is my journey" shit all fucking day, mama. I don't care. There's only 2 journeys. There's only 2 journeys. I'm sorry. I was listening to a trans woman give me the journey speech, and that's all I can. This is my journey. I'm like, bitch, then go. Go. I'm tired of hearing about this journey. But if there's only 2 fucking genders, choose one. Don't play. Choose one. Alright? You have to live in a day. There's no in between. What about if you're in a coma? Get the fuck out of here. You're still alive, bitch. Get ready for another year of Stream with Dreams. We're gonna make sure that female streamers have a fair shake on Twitch, because Lord knows how hard it is for them. And I quote, our goal is simple. The more money we raise, the more women we can fund. What about the guys? Fuck you too, Gundam. Jesus Christ. The grant is ranging from $500 to $2,000. It will be awarded to female Twitch creators in 2019 for items that will align with the 1DF Foundation's mission. For those included, conference travel, equipment upgrades, workshops, and more. So, why would they need money for travel? Are we paying for these girls to move across country to pursue a streaming dream? Because if so, I'm not going to be happy with this. Well, I'm not paying, so what do I give a fuck? Equipment upgrades. There's a lot of guys that should. Why is there no fucking thing like this for men? Why not? There's no equality here. It's fucking violence. There's a goddamn gynocentric bullshit parade, and we're just supposed to sit here and take it all the time. It fucking sucks to be a straight man. You give all you got, and then you just get marginalized and treated like shit. And then you got, unfortunately, the lesser men. Lesser men are the guys that, like, literally will call themselves male feminists, the dudes who white knight stupid shit, and the men that are willing to feed into these girls' fucking pockets. I mean, look at the money Belle.Fiend makes. Amaranth, Alinity. Alinity is selling her fucking bras and panties, for God's sakes.
Younger. Oh, shit.
And you're telling me, like, how many dudes who wants to buy Dr. Disrespect's underwear? Ninja has to give away underwear for free. And he was the top streamer for the longest time, motherfuckers, on Twitch. The first 100 people to reply to this can get a year's worth of these men's underwear. Yeah, Stream with Dreams. You can only have dreams if you're a woman.
Want it all, don't you?
There's so much of this shit. And this 1,000 Dreamers Fund thing, it's pretty much, it's geared towards helping women, even with college funding. And I'm not even gonna get into the fact that more women graduate and go to college than men now.
Or just plain wrong. It's not true that women are being cheated out of 23% of their salaries, or that 1 in 5 will be victims of sexual assault. And it's also the case that in many critical domains, women are faring far better than men. Let's consider a few. Take education. There, it is women who are the privileged sex at every level of education, from preschool to graduate school, and across ethnic and class lines. Women get better grades, they win most of the honors and prizes, and they're far more likely to go to college. Today, women earn a majority of bachelor's degrees and advanced degrees. Our schools do a much better job educating women than men.
But I'm not gonna go into all that, because this is supposed to be comedic. And I'm supposed to take my dark humor and make these situations funny. That has become my job somehow. Oh well, better on YouTube than on a loading dock. I remember when I used to, you know what, who cares, it's my channel, I'll do what I want. This will be where the ending credits roll. I remember when I used to work Walmart way back in the day. Way back when I was young, back when they paid you. Gave you full benefits and everything. And we're working in the back, the warehouse section, all that shit that if it fell on you, you're dead. And I'm coming past, and there's some guys in there, I can't remember the names. And they go, oh hey, it's Gunn, that guy, he's funny, he can make this, he can cheer you up, Charlie, you know, things that go and chase the girlfriends. Like, we're talking about cereal. What type of cereal would you make? And I said Depressionos. And they're like, Depressionos? Like, Depressionos would be like Kick cereal or Life cereal. You know, they'll have the normal wheat pieces, you know, think Lucky Charms. The little marshmallow pieces would be like a guy standing on a chair with a rope, and then like another marshmallow would be a suicide note. So one marshmallow would be a rope, the guy standing on a chair, suicide note. You got an alibi for your suicide or something. You know, Depressionos, you get all those and then you scream out, hey mom, look, I'm committing suicide. So a few days ago, but it's all a marketing stunt by Ruth Brown on August 20th. This chick, I don't really know what her name is, but it'll come to me again, even though I just read these 2 articles and wasted my lifespan. This chick is supposedly an actress and a model. When I went on Twitter and saw this, I replied with this funny comment because Papa Gundam is funny. The New York Times says the Tinder trap model claims she's a victim. She's a victim in all of this douchery. I wrote, if she's a model, I'm the starting linebacker of the New York Giants. Most people found it quite humorous because that was the intent. Some people informed me that she was actually an Instagram model. Upon that point, I became sickened.
You hear very frequently people say things like everyone's creative. It's like, that's wrong, okay? It's wrong. It's just as wrong as saying that everyone's extroverted. First of all, you have to be pretty damn smart to be creative, because otherwise you're just going to get to where other people have already got, and that's not creative by definition. So being fast and being out there at the front of things really makes a difference. And then you also have to have these divergent thinking capabilities, and that's part of your trait structure. And creative people are really different than non-creative people. Partly because, for example, they're highly motivated to do creative things and to experience novelty and to chase down aesthetic experiences and to attend movies and to read fiction and to go to museums and to enjoy poetry and to enjoy music that's not conventional music, for example. These aren't trivial differences. And so it's a real misstatement to make the proposition that everyone's creative. It's just simply not the case. It's a matter of wishful thinking. It's like saying that everyone's intelligent. It's like, well, if everyone's intelligent, then the term loses all of its meaning. Because any term that you can apply to every member of a category has absolutely no meaning. Now, that doesn't, and the other thing you want to be thinking about here is that don't be thinking that creativity is such a good thing. It's a high-risk, high-return strategy. So if you're creative, you just try this. There's creative people in this room, man. You guys are going to have a hell of a time monetizing your creativity. It's virtually impossible. It's really, really difficult because, first of all, let's say you make an original product. You think the world will beat a pathway to your door if you build a better mousetrap. It's like, that's complete rubbish. It isn't true in the least. If you make a good creative product, you've probably solved about 5% of your problem. Because then you have marketing, which is insanely difficult, and then you have sales, and then you have customer support, and then you have to build an organization, and you have to, if it's really novel, you have to tell people what the hell the thing is. We built this future authoring program, right? And it's available for people online. So how do you market that? No one knows what that is, and that's a real problem. If you write a book, well, then you have the problem that another million people have also written a book. But if you produce something that's completely new and doesn't have a category, people can't search for it online. How are they going to find it? So you just have, and then you have pricing problems, and it's really unbelievably difficult to produce something creative and then monetize it. And even worse, if you're the creative person, let's say you have a spectacular invention, you've got no money, right? You've got no customers. Those are big problems. And so maybe you go and you find a venture capitalist. You start with family and friends, because that's how it works. You raise money for your product. You raise money from your family and friends. That's assuming you have family and friends that have some money and that they're going to give it to you. And most people aren't in that situation. So it's a terrible barrier right off the bat. And then, of course, you're putting your family and friends at substantial financial risk, because the probability that your stupid idea is going to make money is virtually zero, even if it's a really brilliant idea. And so then let's say, well, you get past family and friends and you get venture capitalists involved, because that's often the next step, or an angel investor. There's steps in building a business. Family and friends, angel investor, that's some rich guy that you happen to meet, some man or some way who's into this sort of thing and is willing to provide you with some money to get your product off the ground. Well, how much of your product is that person going to take? Well, most of it. And then if you get a venture, and no wonder, because, you don't have any money. How are you going to bargain for control over your product? He'll just say, well, do you want the money or not? And if your answer is no, then he'll go and do something else with his money. It's not like there's no shortage of things that you can do with your money. There's a million things you can do with it. So you're not in a great bargaining position. And then if you get venture capitalists involved, they'll take another big chunk, and maybe if they're not very straight with you, they'll just throw you out. Because maybe by that point in the company's development, you're nothing but a pain in the neck, because what do you know about marketing? and sales and customer service and building an organization and running a business. Like, you don't have a clue, so why do they need you? So even if you're successful at generating a new idea and you put it into a business, the probability that you, as the originator of the idea, are going to make some money from it is very, very low. So don't be thinking that creativity is something you would want to curse yourself with. Now, it's not all bad, because it opens up avenues of experience for creative people that aren't available to people who aren't creative. But it definitely is a high risk, high return strategy. So the overwhelming probability is that you will fail. But a small proportion of creative people succeed spectacularly. And so it's like a lottery in some sense. You're probably going to lose. But if you don't lose, you could win big. And that keeps a lot of creative people going. But also, they don't really have much choice in it, because if you're a creative person, you're like a fruit tree that's bearing fruit. So you don't really have, you can suppress it, but it's very bad for you. The creative people I've worked with, is if they're not creative, they're miserable, so they have to do it. But there's real joy and pleasure in it, and psychological utility. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's it's certainly not a conservative strategy for moving forward through life. So, whenever I talk to people who are creative, and you guys should listen to this, because I know what I'm talking about. If you happen to be creative, if you're a songwriter or another kind of musician or an artist or any of the other number of things that you might be, find a way to make money and then practice your craft on the side, because you'll starve to death otherwise. Now, for some of you that won't be true, but it's a tiny minority. Your best bet is to find a job that will keep body and soul together and parse off some time that you can pursue your creative thing, because then, as a long-term strategy, a medium to long-term strategy, it's a better one. But it's got incredibly difficult for people, musicians, for example, it's incredibly difficult for new musicians to monetize their craft, even if they're really, really good at it. So so I say, everyone's not creative, and everybody goes, oh, that's terrible. It's like, it's not so terrible. It's not self-evident that you would curse someone with high levels of creativity.
It's sad to see that people are disenchanted and nihilistic and depressed and anxious and aimless and perverse and vengeful and all of those things. It's terrible. And then to see people question whether that's necessary, and then to start to rise out of it, it's like, it's so fun. Like last night I was after my talk, it's overwhelming. I don't usually think about these things, but I was after my talk last night, and so all these people line up. The thing about the Old Testament is that
I don't want a straw. I want real human moments. I want to see you. I want you to see me. I don't want to give that up. I don't want to be an ant,
Yeah, no, I don't want to be an ant either.
A while ago, I stumbled upon this poem by Charles Bukowski on what it takes to be a writer.
If it doesn't come bursting out of you, in spite of everything, don't do it. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. If you have to sit up for hours staring at your computer screen or hunched over your typewriter, searching for words, If it's hard work, just thinking about doing it, don't do it. Unless it comes out of your soul like a rocket. Unless being still would drive you to madness or suicide or murder, don't do it. When it is truly time, if you have been chosen, it will do it by itself, and then it will keep on doing it until you die, or it dies in you. There is no other way, and there never was.
His message, of course, extends to other creative professions, from directing to composing music to painting or even sports. And although I think it's a beautiful poem and quite a romantic way of looking at creative endeavors, he is also horribly and fundamentally wrong. History is filled with creative geniuses where it didn't just came bursting out of them. Take some of our current super talent writers, for example. From Aaron Sorkin, who describes having a perpetual writer's block, to George R. Martin, who can't seem to finish his new book, to Tarantino, who has spoken about how difficult it is to be staring at an empty piece of paper where somehow his new movie needs to appear. And finally, Robert McKee, writer of the Bible on screenwriting, who claims he is the biggest procrastinator in the world. I think for these creative minds, but also for you, me and many others, the more excited you are about your creative endeavor, the bigger the project and the more important to fulfilling your dreams, the harder it is to actually sit down and do it.
The trap that many writers, including myself, fall into mainly consists of staring motionless at a blank page. It's not that we don't want to write, or that we don't have the ability to put words down on the page. We just don't have any good ideas. It's not a fun place to be, believe me.
As Stephen Pressfield states, there is a secret that real writers know that wannabe writers don't. It is not the writing part that's hard. What's hard is sitting down to write. And he calls this force that keeps us from sitting down resistance. Resistance, according to Pressfield, is what stands between the life we live and our unlived life. It stands between us and our dreams of who we want to become and what we want to create. Are you a writer that doesn't write, a painter that doesn't paint, an entrepreneur that never starts a venture? Then you have fallen victim to resistance. Resistance is to be taken seriously, says Pressfield. It is to be declared evil. Millions have been defeated by it. Dreams have died because one gave up or never dared to start. It is therefore essential to learn to recognize resistance and learn how to beat it. Pressfield gives a beautiful description of resistance. He states that resistance is invisible and internal. We might think that it is friends, jobs, pets or the internet that keeps us from our creative work, but that's false.
I'm hungry. I should get coffee. Coffee would help me think. But I should write something first, then reward myself with coffee. Coffee and a muffin. Okay, so I need to establish the themes. Maybe banana nut. That's a good muffin.
The force of resistance that drives us to engage with these things and procrastinate comes from ourselves. Resistance is the self-generated enemy from within. Resistance is most commonly expressed in procrastination because it is the easiest to rationalize. I'll start, but I'll start tomorrow.
God, there was one week when you wore sweatpants. Every day.
You shall not pass!
Of course, resistance' goal is to have us saying this until our deathbed. Other manifestations of resistance can be indulging in alcohol, sex, masturbation, TV, gossip, and eating fat, sugar, salt, and chocolate. Pressfield describes that indulging is not always a manifestation of resistance, but if we feel hollow and unfulfilled afterwards, it probably was. We subconsciously know that we gave up our long-term goal for instant gratification. Resistance beat us.
You're out there sticking your dick in anything that moves, trying to get back at me, which is fine. Do you know what the worst thing is? You're not writing. You have this gift, you have this incredible talent, and you're just flushing it down the toilet.
Resistance expresses itself when you create drama in your life, claim victimhood, when you spend your time criticizing others, when you turn your life into a soap, or when you rationalize away why you haven't started yet. A working artist doesn't accept this kind of self-destructive behavior in his life because it prevents him from his work. Yet resistance can be helpful. Resistance points us to our true calling. It can be felt when we fear starting a creative project. This fear means that it is something that we need to do, something we have a deep love for. If you didn't love a project that's terrifying you, you wouldn't feel anything at all.
My head is full of doubts. When it's time to step on the wire, I don't know if I'll be able to take my first step.
Your heart will tell you what to do.
The more resistance you feel towards a project, the more fulfilled you will be when you finish it. Resistance always points us to our true north. So how do we consistently beat resistance? As Steven Pressfield says, by turning pro. As he describes turning pro, it has nothing to do with making or not making money out of your creative work. It is in fact a philosophy of work, an ideology of ethics on how you conduct your creative projects. You can turn professional one day and be an amateur again the next.
In short, I was back.
Yes, there is something I want to ask you. How the fuck do you write so many books so fast? I think, I've had a really good 6 months. I've written 3 chapters, and you've finished 3 books in that time.
The way that I work, I try to get out there and I try to get 6 pages a day. So with a book like End of Watch, and when I'm working, I work every day, 3-4 hours, and I try to get those 6 pages, and I try to get them fairly clean.
And you do hit 6 pages a day?
I usually do.
Now that is an example of a pro. As Pressfield states, the professional knows that the mundane physical act of sitting down and starting to work sets in motion a mysterious process that produces inspiration. The amateur waits for inspiration. The professional knows that it will come after he starts. Now, as you see, turning pro has little to do with talent. George R. Martin is one of the most gifted authors of a generation, but he hasn't turned pro, which is why I am still waiting for his next book. The professional therefore acts in the face of fear. When the amateur fears a big creative endeavor, he waits for the fear to disappear. The professional knows this will never happen and starts anyway. An amateur dreams of stardom and glory. The professional has no use for this. He knows that success is merely a byproduct of work. He does the work and lets the rewards come or not come as they may. By doing this, the pro avoids disappointment, an ally of resistance that it will use to make us give up.
Are you now? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
May I introduce to evidence?
No, you are out of order.
My work.
No.
By which you are making this determination.
The chair will rule.
It's critical.
No, just a minute. Your screenplays are too long.
I've heard that before.
The professional also plays it as it lays. He doesn't find excuses in bad luck, adversity or injustice. Neither does he let a windfall or good luck fool him into thinking he is there already.
I'll write you a movie for $1,200 then.
And you don't want your name on it?
No, you don't want my name on it.
He accepts the situation as it is. The pro marches on, no matter what. The professional lets go of his ego. He doesn't take failure or success personally. Fear of rejection is human and lies deep in everyone. Resistance knows this and uses it to paralyze us and prevent us from doing our work. Pressfield states that this is one of the hardest aspects of turning pro. The professional puts his heart and soul into his work, then he steps back and assesses it hardly and coldly. He takes notes where he can do better his next project and then he moves on. The professional thus accepts criticism but never takes it personally. He knows resistance will use rejection to break him. Therefore, the professional endures adversity. When he's face down in the arena chewing on sand and everyone is laughing at him, he knows it is still better to be in the arena than standing on the sideline. Lastly, where the amateur might make romantic claims about doing it for the love, about not caring or being even proud of not making money, the professional recognizes that too much love will freeze him. Playing for money is the device he uses to adopt a working man mentality. As Pressfield states, the muse of inspiration loves a blue-collar work ethic, she loves the working stiff and hates prima donnas. The pro takes money to turn his love into his job. Technically he plays for pay, but in the end he does it for the love of the game. At this point you might be thinking, what a cold and heartless way to look at creative work. Where's the romance? Where's the mythology? Where's the beauty and mystery of art? These are things that we aim for when we turn pro, because we know when we beat resistance and sit down to do our work, something magical happens. When we sit down and grind it out, inspiration strikes, words start to flow effortlessly. Call it a flow state, call it being in the zone, or as Pressfield does, call it a muse. Where resistance resides in hell, creation has a seat in heaven. Here the muse looks down and admires your grind, your professionalism. When you present yourself to her with an attitude of egolessness and service, she will come down and sit on your shoulder, a powerful ally to help you in your endeavor. When we beat resistance and start, the muse will guide us, battling the dark force of resistance beside us until we finish our project. It is only at this moment, when you type that last word, when you play that last note, when you dance that last step, that you can look resistance in the eye and say, "Rest in peace, motherfucker." After which you will start a new project and the battle starts anew. Thanks for watching, everyone. In a day or two I will drop an... Alright, first a thank you to Monday.com for sponsoring this video. After you're done watching, click the link in the description below.
My band. I will
All right, so anyways, you live in this story. And first of all, you get your own story together. And that's by integrating your motivations and emotions together under social influence. You know, Piaget kind of states that before the age of 3, kids can't really play. They're egocentric. It's not exactly right, because you're actually playing with your mother from the time you're born. So even with breastfeeding, that's a social interaction. And it's a complex cooperative endeavor, and it's often hard for mother and infant to get that right because it's complicated and it requires a lot of social interaction. Like, well, the child has to learn not to bite, for example, you know, and the mother has to learn not to be too nervous, and there's a lot of social bonding. It's really complicated social interaction. So the child, the infant, even at the earliest stages, is already engaged in a complex social dynamic that's essentially play-oriented, but it's, you know, it's pretty primordial. It has to do mostly with the mouth. The child's mouth and tongue are already hardwired at birth. So your child is this is a Freudian observation as well, your child is almost all mouth and tongue when it's born. The rest of its body, well, you watch infants, like, even when they're, how old? 7 months, 6 months, 4 months, I can't even remember now. You know, they'll move their arm and they kind of go like this. It's like they have got no fine control control. It's more like they have, clubs on the ends of sticks. It's like that. Their nervous system isn't thoroughly myelinated. They don't have control over themselves, but their mouth and tongue are already wired up, and so otherwise they wouldn't be able to swallow or nurse. So the oral element is extraordinarily important for a young child. That's why kids put everything in their mouth. Even when they're a bit older, it's like they see with their tongue, which of course everyone can do. If you put a block in your mouth, you can tell that it's a cube. You can tell that it's a cube without looking at it. So you can see with your tongue, you can see with your hands, you can even see to some degree with your ears. Anyways, so there's social interaction right from the beginning, but for the point of simplification, you might say, well, first the child organizes themselves into a functional unity under the pressure of social dynamics, and then they get unified enough so that they can attain unity with another child by setting up a fictional world and cooperating and competing within that, because that's quite interesting too, because people often juxtapose cooperation and competition as if they're opposites, but they're not opposites at all. Another Piagetian observation. So you say, well, is hockey a competitive game? And people would say, well, yeah. But then you think, well, really? Really? No one brings a basketball, right? So we're going to play by the rules. That's cooperation. Well, are the teams competing against each other? Well, yes, but they agree to compete within a particular landscape, and they all cooperate to maintain that landscape. And so you do the same thing when you're playing Monopoly. It's like you're trying to win, but at the same time you're cooperating. That's society, man. That's society right there. You're cooperating. That's the big enclosure, and within that there are regulated competitions. But to separate those artificially and say, well, one's competition and the other's cooperation is it's just not very smart. It's not observant. That isn't how it works. And games are intensely cooperative, even if they're intensely competitive. I mean, the hockey teams are playing the same game. That's the cooperation. Then each team, there's competition within the team to be the best player, let's say, but everyone wants that because everyone wants good players to emerge, but you still cooperate like mad with your teammates, and if you don't pass and play like a reasonable person, then they're going to not be happy with you. And so even within that competition, cooperation is regulating the interactions, and then you can think, this is a really good thing to think too. It's like, people often say to their kids, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And the kid, of course, has no idea what that means. It's like, what do you mean? I'm trying to win. And the parent says, no, it matters how you play. And the kid pushes them, and the parents really can't come up with a good explanation of why that's the case. They might say, well, other kids won't play with you. Well, there you go. Because you could say, this is something to think about. So there's a game, and there's a victory within the game. But then there's the set of all games. And there's victory across the set of all games. And the victory that you attain across the set of all games isn't winning all the games. It's being invited to play all the games. And so if you play fair, then you're playing a metagame. And the metagame is how to win across the set of all games. And so if you teach your child how to behave properly, then they always get invited to play. And that makes them winners. And that's that. And so if you understand that, you understand something phenomenally important about the emergence of morality. Because people, moral relativists in particular, think that morality is relative. And of course, human beings are diverse, just like languages are diverse. And there's more than one playable game, but there's not really more than one playable metagame. It's like you're either the kind of person that other people want to play with, or you're not. And if you're not the kind of person that other people want to play with, then you're a loser. It's as simple as that. And that's true of all cultures. They might be playing different individual games within their culture, undoubtedly they are. But the set of all games that they play is still common across cultures. That's part of what makes us human. And then you could say as well, we're actually evolved to detect people who are good at playing the set of all possible games. And we actually know that. That's not theoretical. We know, for example, some things are easy to remember and some things are hard to remember. here's something that's easy to remember. You play with someone and they cheat. Man, you will remember that. That's like in your mind. That's not going anywhere. And so you're great at detecting cheaters. And you remember. And that's because you can't trust a cheater. And you shouldn't invite a cheater to play a game with you because they might cheat. And so that's part of the innate morality system. You remember cheaters because they aren't good at playing a metagame. And of course you're evolved. Of course you're adapted to the metagame because you're the product of this immense evolutionary history, right? And whoever your ancestors were, which is an unbroken string of successful reproducers going back 3.5 billion years. You think about that. Every single one of your ancestors successfully reproduced. It's mind-boggling. The chances against that are so, it's billions to one. And here you are, the line of 3.5 billion years of success. The whole world was trying to kill you that whole time, and here you are. It's like, but you know, you're still only going to last about 80 years. So, but that's, you know, still, you know, good for you. So anyways, well, is there something wrong with generating money? It's like, well, it depends on what you're going to do with the money. You know, like if you're going to spend it all on hookers and cocaine, then probably that's reprehensible.
Well, thanks a lot, Jordan, for coming and doing the interview.
Yeah, no problem.
It's funny, I'd planned all these questions, and then we've just had a chat before rolling about you know, your interest in entrepreneurship, and maybe that could be the angle we could use on the podcast, because maybe it's not what you've talked about on a lot of other podcasts. So I might just shut the laptop and we might go down there if that's all right with you. So yeah, how does psychology, temperament marry up and link with psychology? You're obviously well known for psychology commentary in other areas, but maybe we could focus a bit on that domain.
Well, I mean, there's lots known about what predicts success in different domains across the lifespan, let's say. The first question is, if you're trying to analyze something like business success or productive success, what are the proper domains of category? And so if you're trying to categorize jobs, for example, which turns out to be quite difficult, the simplest conceptual scheme that's practical, that gets you somewhere, is like a 2x2 matrix. There are simple jobs and complex jobs. That's the first thing that's worth knowing. And it's a continuum, really. But a simple job is one where once you're trained, you just repeat what you're doing. So factory line work would be an example of that, or checking out people at a grocery store, or restocking grocery shelves, or jobs like that. The best predictors for success in those jobs is conscientiousness, trait conscientiousness. And conscientious people are orderly and industrious, and we don't exactly know why they are. It seems like it's associated, oddly enough, with such things as disgust sensitivity. So maybe people are conscientious because they get disgusted with themselves if they're not useful, guilty. You know, they get guilty if they're not engaging in productive enterprise, and maybe that's a marker for a kind of complex social responsibility. You know. But
which sounds like the complete opposite of most entrepreneurs I know.
Well, that's the thing. The entrepreneurs are different. So for simple jobs, IQ, intelligence, predicts how fast you learn the job, but not how well you do it once you learn it. And what predicts there is conscientiousness. So you basically, if you're hiring people, you want conscientious people who are. That's the most important thing. And then the second most important thing is you want people who are relatively low in trait neuroticism, which is a negative emotion dimension, because they're less likely to be absentee, and so forth. So in complex job is one where the demands change on a regular basis. And so most managerial and administrative positions are complex jobs because you can't learn the job once and for all. And then the best predictor for complex jobs, the first predictor is IQ. And the second predictor is conscientiousness. And IQ is about 3 times more powerful than conscientiousness as a predictor. And then, so that's the first, simple versus complex. And then the second category scheme would be something like managerial/administrative versus entrepreneurial. And the entrepreneurial types, actually, they're over with the artists. So the best predictor for entrepreneurial success, first is IQ. Second is trait openness, which is the creativity dimension. So entrepreneurial types tend to be very high in trait openness. And so that sets them with the artists and also with the political liberals, because the best predictor of political liberalism is trait openness.
Right.
So the managers and administrative types, they tend to be conservative, and the entrepreneurial and creative types tend to be liberal. And so if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be a lateral thinker, and so you'll be the sort of person, if you hear an idea, that will trigger off a whole bunch of other ideas, and you'll be motivated primarily by interest in pursuing your ideas. But your downfall is likely to be organizational and administrative ability. So it's often useful for entrepreneurial types to pair themselves with managerial and administrative types.
Yeah. It's like you are describing my soul here.
Yeah. Well, there's a tension. There's this weird tension between doing one thing right, which is what you need to do if you've already decided what it is that you're doing, and scanning the landscape for something new to do that would be worthwhile. Those aren't the same enterprises. And so most companies are an uneasy marriage of entrepreneurial and managerial types. As the company gets more and more established, the managerial and administrative types tend to dominate. But then that becomes problematic because it means it's more and more difficult for the company to shift laterally when it has to, which is, again, I think why so many companies eventually fail.
Because they lose the creative head, is that what you mean?
Sure, they lose the flexibility.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're trying to maximize their ability to implement, but it's very difficult to do that without also simultaneously bearing the cost of narrowing. Right?
Yeah.
So the thing is if you know what you're doing, you want to hire a conservative. If you don't know what you're doing, you want to hire a liberal. Right. So that's a way of thinking about it temperamentally. It's also a way of parsing out the political landscape to understand, at least in part, why you need conservatives and liberals.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I find a business is like a family. And in the past, in my company, I've had all under 25-year-old male entrepreneurs. Why did we hire them? Because that's what we were like.
Right.
And I've found entrepreneurs tend to hire versions of themselves at first, instead of being more self-aware to go, actually, I'm chaotic, disruptive. What I need is order and, like you said, good administrative skills, conscientiousness. So you go through that chaos of hiring people too much like you and having like too much male energy or too much creative energy. Then you maybe react and hire a lot of administration and conscientiousness, and then you maybe lose the soul in your company. And then the creative's trying to drag the company forward. Feels like he's getting held back by everybody.
Well, and it is. It is. But the funny
it's needed to hold him back, but they've got to let him go as well, or her, haven't they? Otherwise,
that's the problem. The fundamental problem is most new ideas are stupid, dangerous, and counterproductive.
And they're the ones that change the world.
well, they are sometimes. They are sometimes, but there's a subset of new ideas that, even though new ideas are dangerous and disruptive and often counterproductive and generally don't result in a productive company, some of them are absolutely necessary, and they're the thing you need to do next. And so, and that's a very difficult problem to solve, because it's the fundamental problem of innovation. It's like most innovations aren't justified or warranted, but some of them are absolutely crucial. So how do you distinguish between them? And the answer is, well, we don't know. The part of the way that you do that in a dynamic economy is you let and encourage a whole host of entrepreneurs to produce their ideas, and you let almost all of them fail. It's kind of painful for the entrepreneurs.
But limited company and all those kind of structures are set up to make that more safe, aren't they?
Right. Yeah. Well, those are. This is something that's massively underappreciated.
It is.
I would say on the liberal left end of the political spectrum, is people just don't understand how absolutely revolutionary the idea of a limited company is. Because what a limited company allows is your idea to die instead of you. And that's a big deal.
Otherwise, no one would take the risk, would they, of creating anything?
Well, that's right. No one could bear the risk,
Because if you failed, it would wipe you out permanently. It's like, well, who the hell's going to take that risk? And so the fact that limited liability is one of the unbelievable tech. I can't believe that we
That's
ever
like an innovation
invented it.
that we all just forget
Jesus.
about, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's such a merciful innovation. It's like, you mean I get to fail and no one's going to kill me? No one's going to throw me in debtor's prison. It's not going to hang around my neck for the rest of my life. I can actually take a risk. So because the other thing you see often with entrepreneurs is that they fail a lot before they succeed. And so, I mean, you have to be pretty damn spectacularly lucky to have your first idea when you don't know what the hell you're doing be a spectacular success.
Or maybe it's a good idea, but you weren't ready, and you're more ready.
Or the marketplace isn't ready. Or I mean, that's the other thing that people don't really understand is because if you're a naive entrepreneur, you think, well, all I have to do is make a great product. It's like, no, that's about 5% of it. You know, and that shocked the hell out of me when I started building software, for example, because we assumed that we developed software to help people select better employees, and we never could sell it except in very rare circumstances. But we assumed that if we had a product that was validated, we could show that it had the effects that we wanted, and that it was more efficient than other products in the marketplace, that selling it would be easy. It's like, well, that's just so wrong. Selling and marketing things is impossible.
I love it when people say, oh, the product just sells itself. It's just one of those things which are like, you've not been in business a very long time. Because you've got market forces, you've got your skill set. You could have a great product. You're just not ready to sell it because you haven't got enough experience.
Well, and you don't know how to price it.
Yeah.
And you don't know who to talk to sell it. You know, you can spend your whole life, especially if you're selling to companies, which is virtually impossible, talking to the wrong people. And it feels like work, and it really is work, but you never end up contacting a real decision maker. And then you can't tolerate the excessive delay. Like you think, well, I'm going to go sell this product to a big company because they can obviously provide me with a massive contract. It's like, yeah, but there's a relationship between the size of the company and the delay in the implementation, and the delay can be years. And then this happened to us all the time. It was very painful. We'd get right to the point of signing with a large company, and there'd be an internal management transformation, and the person that we were dealing with would disappear. It's like, oh no, it's like, now what? We actually had that happen with a really big company in New York. We were right on the verge of signing a contract for use of this self-authoring program that we designed, which helps people plan their lives. And the week that we were ready to sign the contract, the CEO resigned. Gone. Was probably a year of sales and marketing work just evaporated. You know,
and you don't get paid for any of that. You get no reward for getting 364 days down to 365 days.
You certainly don't. Well, and it's also really easy for one of the things that tech incubators do really badly, I think, is they do lots of things really badly, generally speaking. But one of the things they do that's very counterproductive with the people that they train is they emphasize the development of the company, but they don't force their entrepreneurs to find customers, because your first customer is the most difficult thing you'll ever do as a business person, in my experience, to find someone who will actually pay you that first time.
That isn't your mum.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's right. That isn't a family member. That's an actual customer. And the other problem that people face when they're trying to sell a new product is one of the ways that people decide whether they're going to buy something is whether or not A, they know anyone else who's already bought it, or B, if there's other people in their domain that are already using it. And if your sales pitch is, well, no, this is new and revolutionary, you think, well, that's a wonderful sales pitch. It's like it is if you're talking to someone who's entrepreneurial and risk-taking and interested in revolutionary ideas. But if you're talking to a middle manager in a company, the last thing that person wants to hear is, well, you could be a risk taker and introduce this into your company. The person's thinking, I don't want to put my job or reputation on the line for your product, even if it is revolutionary, in part because if it succeeds, I probably won't be rewarded for its success. So when we were selling our employee selection software, for example, we were academics, and so, you know, there was lots of things we didn't know about business. And one of the things we ran into, which was so funny, we talked to the people who were doing the hiring, and they had a certain budget, which was usually lower than, because they had virtually no budget for hiring, weirdly enough. So what we were charging for the product, which was still extremely modest, exceeded their budget. I said, well, look, you're going to make a 250-fold return on this. Pessimistically, it's 50. Realistically, it's 250, and the upper end was more like 500. So it's a no-brainer to implement this. It's like, well, we're budgeted on the cost side. What do you mean? Well, if we hire more productive employees, we won't be rewarded for that. We'll just be punished for spending more money on the outset. I thought, well, we can't even talk to you because I'm trying to sell you something that will benefit your company, but for you, as the decision maker, there's nothing but risk in implementing the new process. So that just blew me away. It's like, oh, I see. The hiring budget and the productivity budget aren't associated. So that's like a fatal impediment to our sales process. So that was, well, we learned lots of things about, and I came out of the whole enterprise with way more respect for people, especially for people who do sales. Jesus, that's such a brutal job. And, you know, when people they have it's easy for people to, it's even a popular trope to be somewhat contemptuous of salespeople, you know, all those salespeople.
Definitely in Britain, we're very reserved when it comes to selling in Britin. I mean, I don't put ads on my podcast. I mean, there's ads on virtually every American podcast. I don't put ads. I don't need the revenue, so in a way, there's the old creative artist side of me that doesn't want to interrupt my work with ads. But like, if I started putting ads on my podcast, you know, some people would be okay with it. There'd be a bit of a riot.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a real mistake because we're not giving the devil his due. It's really, really hard to be a good salesperson. And people like that are unbelievably rare and they're unbelievably valuable.
And nothing wrong with it, and it doesn't make you a bad person, and you're not selling your soul.
Well, it's also how are you going to generate revenue? And without that,
how's economy
going to
money even going to move in an economy?
The other thing that happens with the artistic and maybe the entrepreneurial types too is that they end up with contempt for the business end of the process, and that's a real mistake. You know, and one of the things that I tell people who are artistically oriented, let's say, so they're in the entrepreneurial category, is, look, it's virtually impossible for you to monetize your product. That's the first thing you have to understand. So maybe you'll get lucky and you'll figure out a strategy. But if you add contempt for the sales and marketing process to that impossibility, you can be bloody well sure that all you're going to do is starve. So you better drop your contempt for the sales and marketing end of this if you want to sustain yourself through your life. And that's going to be a prerequisite for your creative endeavor. And art schools and establishments like that do an absolutely dreadful job of...
Well, they don't teach it. I was an artist. I was an artist. I went through art school. They don't teach it.
No.
Never once.
No, I know. And and I mean...
How are you going to commercialize your venture? How are you going to pay for your mortgage?
How are you going to buy food?
Yeah, with a paintbrush and a canvas.
Oh, Jesus. And artists are in particularly dire position because as a visual artist, for example, you're not only competing with all the visual artists that now exist, and there's plenty of them, but you're also competing with all the dead artists who already have an established reputation and a body of work that's being still being exchanged in the marketplace. And so you don't want to add contempt for the sales and marketing process to that. And you also probably have to understand that if you want to be an artist, that you're also going to have to have another job. Because it's just, unless you want to bang your head against the wall until it's bleeding, it's so hard. And I mean, I've known some people who are outstanding artists, and I've known very, very few. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who was able to make a living from the outset of their career as a non-commercial visual artist. Brutally difficult. So, and adding contempt to that is not helpful. You should be very thankful that sales and marketing people exist. Even I know there's that, what would you call it, the mercantilist commercial element to it that is sort of, in some sense, you can consider it distasteful from the perspective of higher aesthetics, but don't confuse your ignorance of something important sales and marketing with your moral purity. That's a big mistake. It's a big ethical mistake, and you will pay for that.
So I think there's some simple solutions. I always want to sort of summarize this part so far. I've always enjoyed selling straight to consumer and not to businesses.
Yeah, I like that better too.
I think that you've got more customers, you're always at the decision maker. Sometimes it's the husband or the wife who owns the credit card strings, but other than that, you're always at the decision maker. You learn very intuitively and quickly, you get a quick feedback loop. Whereas, like you said, if you're dealing with a manager who's got their own motives, and then a company who's got different motives, they're not going to tell you the truth. You've got to unwrap all of that.
They don't even know what the truth is necessarily, because they can't represent their business because they don't embody it.
Yeah. So straight to consumer is number one. I think the second thing is, I think probably it is fair to say that sales and marketing can be learned, but I think it's also fair to say that sales and marketing are more likely to succeed in certain personality traits.
Well, you need to be extroverted, for example. So and assertive. It also helps to be emotionally stable, because what's your failure rate as a salesperson?
It's
like 50 to 1. It's unbelievable. It's like you have to have a constitution of bloody iron to tolerate that, because what's the default answer to do you want to buy something from me? No, it's no, go away, right? It's worse than no. It's like, no, and you're bothering me. And then even if the best you get is, well...
That's worse, by the way. That's worse than no, I'll think about it, the middle grounds. At least with a no, you can move on.
That's right, you drown in, that's right. Well, that's the problem with trying to sell to big companies. It's like,
it's never a no.
Maybe we'll do this. It's like, when? Well, maybe in the next 6 months to a year, which will be delayed. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, we've found selling direct to consumer way less stressful. And the funny thing is...
And more rewarding, sorry to jump in
more
there.
Rewarding.
More rewarding, because you can actually change an individual's life.
Yes.
With a good product.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, the thing about, you kind of have this idea that you could, let's go for a big company, a couple of contracts and we're set. It's like, but you'll die in the interim waiting for the contracts. So, and it is so interesting to think about that in terms of the error of Marxist criticisms of capitalism, because the Marxist criticism was something like capital will accrue in the hands of a smaller and smaller number of individuals, which it does, but the individuals rotate. That's the thing that Marx got wrong. Now with big companies, you think that, well, the big companies absorb all the capital, but the thing is they fail. The reason they fail is because they get so large, they're so ponderous, that they move so slowly that eventually they make themselves extinct. And you experience that when you're trying to sell to them. It's like, oh, you have this rule. Oh, you have this rule. Oh, you also have this rule. Oh, this rule means we have to completely rewrite our software. And then these special adaptations have to be made. And there's 20 people to clear that with. And it's brutally difficult.
Right, so this Marxist capitalism thing, that was one of the initial things I wanted to talk about. And I want to come to that in a minute. I'm bursting now with questions, and I know you've got to go at 12. So, okay, so the next summary then is something that worked for me and my business partner, because I don't like the word self-made, because I don't think anyone's self-made. I think you need people around you, but self-made in the sense that we weren't given money to start and we didn't have family money.
That's hard.
And I think the gift in the business we've grown is I have a business partner who's very conscientious, very analytical, very skeptical. His answer is always no.
Right.
For years,
I have a partner like that too.
Right. And I'm the opposite. And so that allowed me to go and do the sales and the marketing, and allowed him to clear up my mess, accounts, finance, structure, organisation. So to anyone listening who isn't really a natural sales or marketing person or doesn't want to learn it, partner or align with someone who is. And you probably make a great team.
Well, and it's also really important to understand that these things, they can be learned to some degree, but there are temperamental proclivities. And so if you're open, technically that's a big 5 trait. Your people who are listening, I have a website, understandmyself.com, and if you want to know your big 5 profile, it will provide that, and it breaks each of the big 5 into the 2 subcomponents, and so it's very useful so that you can go there and find out what temperamental pattern you have. If you're high in openness, then you're oriented towards entrepreneurial activity. If you're high in conscientiousness, then you're oriented towards managerial activity. If you're high in agreeableness, customer service. Disagreeable people, well, disagreeable people are they're also good for managerial positions if they're not too disagreeable. If you're extroverted, that tilts you towards sales. These things are, and so if you're going to hire someone for the job, you should first of all understand that every person isn't for every job, and you might as well match the person and the temperament to the job. And if you know your own temperament, then you can think, well, I'm an entrepreneurial type. I'm high in openness, but low in conscientiousness. It's like, well, Christ, you're going to be an implementation catastrophe.
Yeah.
You're not going to do the paperwork. You're not going to do the follow-up. You're a mess. So find someone who's orderly. Well, I can't work with someone who's orderly because they'll constrain me. It's like, yeah, they will, and you need it.
Yes.
And so there's that, there's something interesting about how your brain works. So if you want to make a really fine adjustment with your finger, the best way to do it is to push in one direction and then push against your finger with the other finger, because then you can make unbelievably tiny corrections. And so a system seems to work better this way of a right and left hemisphere. If there's dynamic opposition, because you'd think, well, I'd move a lot faster if everything got the hell out of the way. Yeah. It's like, not necessarily.
You crash and burn quicker.
Well, that's exactly it. And so, you said you partnered with someone who had traits that opposed yours. One of my partners is far more disagreeable than me, and I would say more orderly and way more skeptical. And I'm always out there going, well, we could do this, we could do this, we could do that. Here's an opportunity, here's another opportunity. And what he does is a lot of it is no. Yeah, a lot of it is no. And it's frustrating, of course.
Yeah, because we take it personally.
Well, and because you see, if you're open, you see the landscape of opportunity. But a quick death is better than a slow, painful death. And working with someone who says no offers you the opportunity to have a quick death, and that's actually preferable. So you have to tolerate that tension of opposites if you're going to build something that's lasting and that's actually implementable.
So I think this is vital to talk about, and I think generally in the media, the world, our opinions, I think people are too extremist. Everything is good or bad, black or white, right or wrong, up or down, left or right. And to sort of continue your analogy, one of my favourite bands is Radiohead, and they're very big in the UK.
Yeah, I really like Radiohead.
And if you study them, they've all got very different musical tastes, and they often have clashes around the kind of music that they want to write. So the drummer, when they were big with OK Computer, was like, why can't we write 3.5-minute pop songs? That's what's made us massive. And Tom York is like the antithesis of that. And as soon as we're big and well known and number one, I want to do something completely different. And, forget, these are my words, not his, but disruptive and maybe a little bit more anti-pop. And then you've got Johnny Greenwood, who's classically trained, whereas Tom York plays the piano completely unclassically trained. If you have a classically trained pianist, they're like, how does Tom York play the piano like that? The timing, everything, it's wrong, it's all wrong, but that makes his haunting melodies. And so I'm convinced that a 5-piece with all of those push-pull creative clashes, which they've probably had to learn to drive forward in like an arrow, because they've probably had loads of falling outs. I believe that is tantamount to them being the band that they are. And I can say, working with business partners, and I have an MD, and we have about 75 staff. And because initially I wanted Progressive to be hire everyone like me, and then I wanted to hire everyone the opposite of me, and then it was all men. And then when we're too many men, it's like too much testosterone. So then we're all women, and then that brings a different energy. And I'm convinced with families and companies there needs to be this balance.
Well, all these different, so that's genuine diversity, so that's the first thing. If you want genuine diversity, you go for diversity of temperament, right? Not diversity on the basis of ethnicity and that sort of thing. You go for diversity of temperament. And there wouldn't be, from a biological perspective, all these different temperaments wouldn't exist if they didn't have their niches. Right, so because there'd be no place for them, and the thing is, people actually are different, and they're different because differences are required in different circumstances. And it's, another reason to do the personality testing, I would say, is, well, first of all, it's enlightening. I had my kids do this personality test that I told you about.
How old are your kids?
They're in their mid-20s now. I had them do it when they were in their teens, and because they, I tested out the things I was developing on them, and I know my kids pretty well, or so I thought, and when they did the personality test, it revealed to me things about them that I had misconstrued. It was really useful. So
so I thought my daughter was far more disagreeable than she actually was. A lot of the clashes I was having with her, I was having because at that time anyways, she had pretty high levels of negative emotion. And I thought that she was disagreeable. She wasn't. She's very agreeable, but she would get upset quite easily. And so I learned to some degree to comfort her when she was upset rather than argue with her, and that was extraordinarily helpful. And I thought my son was easy to get along with, and he's unbelievably disagreeable, but he's very, very low in negative emotion. So he would never get upset about anything, so he's easy to be around, but trying to get him to do something he doesn't want to do is impossible. He just won't do it. And so and it was quite shocking to me that even though I knew my kids and even though I'm a trained psychologist, I still had elements of their temperament wrong in my conceptualization. So that was extremely useful to figure out and to really develop an appreciation for the fact that those people who don't think like you, they're actually different than you.
And in many areas better than you.
Well, that's the thing, is that, with those differences come, your temperament is a set of strengths and their attendant weaknesses, right? And you don't get the strengths without the weakness. So the thing about open people is like, they're creative, but they're all over the place. And if you're open and high in negative emotion, it's a rough combination because the openness destabilizes you, right? You don't have a stable identity because you're interested in this, and then you're interested in this, and then you're interested in that, and maybe you can handle that. But if you're also an anxious person and have some difficulty with uncertainty, you basically undo yourself by being creative. It's like, how can you stop being anxious if you're never in the same place for more than 1 minute? And so lots of people who are really creative and high in neuroticism, they just unglue themselves. And so for people like that, I recommend is like, try to make a damn schedule. Like try to hem yourself in a bit because you'll just burn yourself out with nervous exhaustion otherwise. So, and it's useful to know all of that.
I think we're trying to balance these paradoxes and ironies because the paradox there is the person who least wants a diary and a structure probably needs it the most.
Right. Well, I have some advice about that too.
Please,
okay, so let's say that you're a person that procrastinates and you don't get things done. Maybe you're creative, you have other things going for you. I would say, learn to use a schedule. And you think, I don't want to be hemmed in by a damn schedule, and it feels like a prison. And fair enough, man, it is a form of prison. But
it's also a form of order.
Well, this is and it's also a precondition for successful creative endeavors. So one of the things I recommend for people to do is to use a calendar like Google Calendar, but not to design the day they should have. Use the calendar to design the day that you would want to have, because you can make a calendar your friend if you don't make it a tyrant. So you don't want to build a tyrant into the system. You want to be intelligent about it, because if you're going to schedule your time, you have to understand that there are things that you need to do, that you should do. Because if you don't do them, you're going to fall behind, and that will be counterproductive. It isn't because someone's wagging your finger at you and saying that this is a moral imperative, even though that might be part of it. It's because there are obligations that you have to fulfill, or you fall farther behind and the obligations get bigger. And that's a bad pathway. So you have to build some of that into the schedule, but a lot of it can be, tomorrow, I want to have the sort of day that I would really be pleased at having by the end of the day. And I want to build in a schedule that I would stick to as well. And so you have to have some appreciation for your own weaknesses. Lay out a schedule and you think, would someone like me actually do that? And if the answer is no, then you modify the schedule until you think that you would do it and that you would be pleased if you did do it. And then the schedule can start to become your friend. And I think if you're not a person who's orderly by nature, the schedule has to be your friend, because otherwise you won't use it.
So it's funny you say that. My most recent book that I launched is called Routine Equals Results. And it's a very short, concise book. I designed it to be, because you don't want War and Peace on how to manage your diary and your life. And it's pretty much exactly that. I think I'd just add a couple of little things. The paradox again. I'm obsessed by the paradox in everything. So you plan a schedule, and I think that your distinction of the end of the day you'll be pleased with, that's different from in how you feel in the moment.
Yes, definitely.
Because how can you need to second guess yourself to know that you're doing the right thing strategically, but in the moment it might frustrate you. But at the end of the day you'll be pleased. And so that requires discipline. So I think if someone sees a diary schedule as an initial test. So design the structure like you said, try and end of the day I'm pleased, test some things, never see anything as permanent. So, okay, that worked for me at the end of the day, that didn't. You've also got to monitor your energy levels because we all eat at different times. And also, this was really important, once I created this, because I tested for months, what coffee to drink at what time, what food to eat at what time, obviously wrapping in my kids and my vision work and all the things that were for me non-negotiables in the day, doing some things I knew I'd wriggle out of, that I hate doing, but I knew, like you say, at the end of the day, I'd be proud that I did, because discipline, while it's hard, is rewarding at the end when you feel that sense of deeper happiness when you've gone through
Well,
it.
and those things that you want to wriggle out of, if you do wriggle out of them, they
The pain is
compound
worse,
and
yeah.
kill you.
Yeah.
So you got to get on top of those things.
And then I found this important, let someone else manage your schedule. Because I know what I'm like, and I'll wriggle out the very things that I know are right for me, because I can.
Yeah.
And whereas if you have an assistant, or even just a system,
Yeah.
that you follow your diary.
Yeah.
So you create the diary, you test the diary, and then you give it to someone else to manage it. Because the amount of times I'm saying to my assistant Louise, I don't want to do that, and she's like, you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because you know that's the right thing
Yeah.
to
Well,
do.
and you might need, like, it might actually be, you say, well, you don't want to do it. It isn't that all of you is saying that. It's like
It's the child in my moment.
Well, 51% of you doesn't want to do it.
Or the
then-
decaffeinated me.
Yeah, well, could easily be. But then if you have someone else come along and say, no, you need to do it, then the 49% of you that wants to do it all of a sudden wins, because it gets that little extra boost.
Yeah.
And so it is really useful too to know where your weaknesses are, and then to help and to institute people around you who will buttress you at your weak points. So, and everyone has their weak points. They're the counterpart to their strong points.
So this is again the paradox thing, that like I really want to get this message out, that you cannot have one without the other. You can't have all the upside without the downside. And I think most of us, it's easy to see downside when it's there. We're probably all focused on that. And when we're feeling good, it's easy to see upside. And if I think of anything good in my life that's happened, business, financial, whatever, it's in seeing the upside when all I initially would have seen is downside, and vice versa. So any team members around you that challenge you, that you might ordinarily push away, see the upside in their skill traits and their personality traits. Like the people who hold you back, well, actually they stop you making mistakes, and they pre-select your ideas for you and let you go with the ones that really are good.
Yeah, they also sort of represent the resistant marketplace, right? So if you have a scheme that you're putting forward and you can't sell it internally, well, those people are representative of, at least in part, of the people you're going to try to sell to externally. And so again, that's the advantage of quick failure. If you can't make the sale within your own organization, it's like, well, that's possibly because what you're selling isn't going to sell. So, or you're not very good at selling it. You haven't crafted your message properly. One of the things you pointed out earlier with regards to the ability to tolerate strife and conflict and the paradoxes, that's absolutely crucially important, because there really isn't anything any different than that. There's nothing in that that's any different from actually thinking. Because thinking actually is conflict. It's the pitting of opposing viewpoints against one another, and it's very stressful and produces a tremendous amount of tension. But the question is, in part, do you want to figure that out in abstraction, even though that's very stressful, or do you want to live that out in the world? And the answer is, man, you better think it through, because even though that's stressful, it's way less stressful than living it out in the world. So. And it is so useful to be in that tension of opposing opinions. So even though it's hard.
Yeah, where much innovation, much creativity, many solutions to problems, they're like that next stage beyond that tension, aren't they? Which of course, emotionally, none of us want to go through. So we try and avoid it, play safe, or whatever.
Put it off.
Yeah.
So, or not say what you think, because then that conflict won't emerge. That's another advantage to being around disagreeable people. Agreeable people won't produce a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
But disagreeable people tell you what they think. And maybe
Which
they're
is
right.
vital to have people around that,
Yeah.
because the ego completely resists that.
That's another thing, especially if you start to become successful. It's like, well, you need some constraints on your egotism.
Yes.
Well, so then you need disagreeable people around you because they'll provide that constraint.
Yeah.
And you also pointed out that, let's say you're successful and that makes you happy, right? And it might. And that's part of that ego inflation process is positive emotion. People that have a lot of positive emotion are impulsive because positive emotion says, make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
And fair enough, but that can lead you down a very impulsive path. You see that with people who are manic because they're really full of positive emotion.
Which is sometimes the scariest, but my dad has a manic depression. And sometimes when he's the highest, that's the scariest.
Oh, definitely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And you're sort of semi-relieved because he's out of the depths.
Yep.
But it's a big warning sign.
Yeah.
I've made some of my biggest mistakes in life when I've been
Right. Well, that's exactly it. Is that you have that motivational impetus, but it's unconstrained, and so that's you're absolutely right. That's and of course, depression is an absolute catastrophe for people. But it's in people in the manic phase that go and rack up $50,000 in credit card bills in one day because they have this brilliant idea it's going to revolutionize the world, and maybe it will, but then you end up with the $50,000 or the $500,000 in rapidly accrued debt.
Yeah.
And you can certainly see that in the explosive phase of development of companies when everyone's hyper enthusiastic. It's like, fair enough. And the enthusiasm also sells, right? Because it's hard to be a non-enthusiastic salesperson, but then everyone says, well, shouldn't we just be happy all the time? It's like, well,
there's another podcast on that.
Well,
no.
And because the first question is, well, what's the downside to positive emotion? Well, there's no downside. We should be just as happy as we can be. It's like, no, manic people.
Humanity would
be
gone in a generation if there was just happy emotion. Nothing would get done. Nothing would get fixed.
And we'd take all sorts of risks that would be catastrophic. So you think, well, you need people who say no. God, that's painful. You need people who get in the way. You need people who are orderly. And for people who are entrepreneurial and expansive in their temperaments, that's all like, oh my God, those are prison walls. But no, they're not. They're necessary structure and protection. And then again, don't be contemptuous of your damn sales and marketing people because you're bloody lucky that you've got them. And they're rare people. And that's also true of that set of skills that's a set of skills you need to develop if you're a creative person and an artist. Don't be contemptuous of that with your false romanticism. I shouldn't have to sell it. It's a great product in and of itself. And all I'm doing is selling out. It's like most people don't sell out because they never have the damn opportunity. And so if you can manage the sales and then you think, well, I'm going to maintain my artistic purity despite the fact that you could manage the sales, well, then you're making an ethical decision. But if you're not selling out because no one wants what you're doing, that's no moral victory.
Well, I mean, some of the most successful artists in the world, because I wrote a book called Money and I've studied this in depth, being a previous artist myself. So like commercially I made business work, but commercially I couldn't make art work. But my business commercially has really benefited from my artistic side.
Right.
And I could say it's a shame I failed commercially in art, but maybe that brought me to where I was. But Damien Hirst, Tracy Emin, Picasso, Warhol, all very commercially savvy artists who you could argue till the cows come home if they're better or worse artists than others. That's subjective, isn't it? But they embraced the commercial side of art and they will probably go down in history. So,
that's the thing too, is that there isn't a lot of difference, or the boundaries between sales and marketing and communicating are blurry. It's like, well, people are also very skeptical, for example, of advertising and find it intrusive. But if you actually want to buy something, an advertisement is quite helpful. So what people really don't like are badly targeted ads. And the advertising people are trying to solve that problem. But if you have done something brilliant and original and no one knows about it and no one ever will, well, that might even be more of a catastrophe than never having done it at all, because then you have this thing that's actually of value and you have to suffer with the fact that no one knows about it, right? No, you have to conjoin that ability to produce creatively with the ability to communicate. And sales and marketing is an integral part of that. Well, that's the next complex problem. And and people often who are artists, they're also contemptuous of the commercial world. Well, everything has a price. It's like, well, there's actually some real advantage to everything having a price, because it helps you value your work in a cooperative endeavor. And it also puts a limitation of sorts on you because you need limitations. It's like, well, if you have an idea, let's say you're creative, you have a whole bunch of ideas. It's like, well, which ideas should you pursue? Well, one constraint you can use is something like, if the idea that I'm interested in has absolutely no commercial viability, then maybe I should put it lower in the priority list. Because you need some mechanism to put things lower in the priority list. One of our rules for product development was that, well, we had to like the idea. It had to be compelling. We wanted it not to do harm to people. We wanted it to help people. We wanted it to be scalable. But then we also decided very early on that we weren't going to make things that wouldn't generate a profit, because it was a constraint. It's like, well, if we can't do all those other things and make a profit, it's a bad idea. So and that's helpful if you have too many ideas.
And what people don't understand is profit is required to reinvest back into infrastructure for growth and everything else.
That's the other thing.
Yeah, and like I used to be an artist, and I had to buy the cheapest canvases with the cheapest paint and the cheapest tools because I had no money. You know, Harry's just you've just upgraded these cameras, haven't you? Well, if he was, picking fag butts off the floor and going down KFC and licking people's fingers for food, he wouldn't be able to.
Right. No kidding. Well, the other thing too is we could get the ethics about this right. It's like, well, is there something wrong with generating money? It's like, well, it depends on what you're going to do with the money. Like if you're going to spend it all on hookers and cocaine, then probably that's reprehensible. But if you're going to...
Well, it still employs the hookers.
Well,
it's still a commercial.
That's right, the hookers might not think it's reprehensible. I suppose neither do the cocaine growers. But, you can argue that there are better and worse things that you could do with your money. If you're guilty about making money, then maybe you should think harder about what the hell you're going to do with the money, because there's some good things you can do with the money.
And why you feel guilty about making money in the first place and where that comes from.
Yeah, and what's productive about... You say, well, I don't want to be greedy. It's like, okay, don't be greedy. Good rule. But, you have a family, you could support them, you could invest the money in the community. There's all sorts of positive things that you could do with your money if you were very, very thoughtful about how you decided to spend it.
People don't get this, sorry to jump in, people don't get that Mother Teresa was basically a money launderer. They just don't get this. A lot of her money came from Robert Maxwell and, a lot of people that would be reprehensibly evil to most of society. But she would take money, she didn't mind where it came from, and then she would do her work with said money. So,
instead of being guilty about making money, you could think hard about what it is that you want to do with it. And do something useful with it and productive. That's and I would say that's also your response. If you happen to be one of those people to whom money is disproportionately flowing, right, because you've started to become successful, and you've hit that acceleration point where you're getting more because you already have, then the ethical requirement isn't to be guilty about that, but to think, okay, how can I use this money which I have been bequeathed in the most responsible manner possible? And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to think, and you can do that with some error. So,
of course, so we've got to start wrapping this up. We've got to sort of wrap it up now. All right then. Sure.
Okay. Yep. You need a meaning to sustain you through life, and most of that meaning is actually to be found, and this goes back to the idea of conscientiousness that we were talking about earlier. It's in the adoption of responsibility that most people find the fundamental meanings in their life. That's really worth knowing, because you might ask, well, why should I be responsible? The answer is, well, you need to do something meaningful, because otherwise life suffering will make you bitter, and bitter is only where you start, it's not where you end. So people might be interested in the book. I told you about understandmyself.com, where you can get your personality assessed quite rapidly. That should be useful. I also have this other program that your listeners might be interested in at selfauthoring.com. And that is 3 programs. One helps you write about your past life so that you can figure out how you got to where you are and where you are. One helps you do an assessment of your virtues and faults, so that you can capitalize on your virtues and rectify your faults. And the last one, which we've most thoroughly tested, helps you develop a personal vision and create an implementable plan for that vision. And we know that if university students do that, for example, that they're about 25% less likely to drop out of college. So, and it's really useful for people to have a articulated and consciously developed vision for their life and a plan. because then you're not buffeted around by the winds of fate to quite such a degree. And you need a plan. You need a plan because you need goals, and you need goals because it's in the pursuit of valued goals that almost everyone finds positive emotion. So, and that's a really useful thing to know. And so what that also means is the more noble your goals, which is the theme in 12 Rules for Life, the higher the probability that you'll be deeply engaged while you're pursuing them. That's a justification for deep philosophy.
Okay, Jordan, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Yeah, you too. Thank you.
This is Jocko Podcast number 112 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
I had a friend, and someday, when I can, I will tell you all about him. But until then, for now, I will say that I could not have asked for a better friend. Did he have faults? Sure. Don't we all? Now, most of his faults weren't really that big of a deal, but they were raw. Raw because he admitted to them all openly and directly and naively, to be honest. In a sort of pointed and heavy-handed self-critique, he would bare his weaknesses to the world and to me and to himself. And he would speak to me as if I had no faults. And I would try to explain otherwise, but he wouldn't listen. He would only judge himself. I'm too emotional, he would say. Not really, I'd tell him. I don't know how to talk to people right. Sure you do, I'd say. I make the same mistakes over and over and over again, he would say. We all do, I would tell him. I was better than him at some things, we both knew that. There were other things he was better at than me. But he always downplayed those things. And we both knew that too. When we were overseas, in a bad place, in a wretched place, he never complained. And I gave him every reason to. I put him in the worst locations, with the greatest possible chances for failure and the highest probability for fire and fury and blood and death. But despite the enemy and the heat and the living conditions and the fear and the wounded men and the screams and the misery that was all around, he did not complain. It seemed at times that God himself was trying to test the limits of my friend. And it seemed like sooner or later, the bullets or the bombs would find him. But through some incomprehensible miracle, he survived through that deployment. Now, I make no claim whatsoever to understand why things in life unfold the way they do. In fact, I must say that many of the things I've seen in the world make no sense to me at all. Sometimes it's just utter confusion, no rhyme, no reason. Some of the things that I've seen have left me downright disgusted, jaded, repulsed, sickened by mankind and the awful and reprehensible things we are capable of. But there's another side to that. There's another side, and there are other people who do their best to redeem all the evil our souls are capable of. My friend was one of those people. After deploying with me and surviving that bloody and violent battlefield, my friend, like most of the guys in my old job, he volunteered to deploy again. I thought, and I told him, prematurely and incorrectly, that the enemy was done. I told him that the war was all but over. I told him, just do the deployment and sit tight over there and play the game, and in a few months we'll be back and we can go surfing and we can play guitar and we can tell stories and we can cook steaks and we can surf some more. I told him we could carry on when he got home. That was the plan. It was a good plan. But the enemy gets a vote. And there was intense violence during that deployment for him as well. It was similar to what we had experienced together overseas, an aggressive enemy hell-bent on killing Americans, mixed in an urban environment with a terrified local populace. He told me that the enemy he was now facing wasn't as tactically skilled as the enemy we had faced, but he said that they were braver and more determined. That seemed to concern him a bit more. He seemed to feel the odds were that he would die. He sent me his last will and testament. He was not morose about it, just stating the facts. It's bad over here. The enemy is aggressive. Casualty rates are very high. The enemy has new weapons that are extremely capable. It didn't look good. I waited.
Hey, what up, Vince? Just about to get off.
I waited the long and completely powerless wait. One known mostly by mothers and fathers and wives and children that are old enough to understand. But a wait also made by the brothers at home that know the risk all too well. It was a long wait. At my friend's memorial service, his brother told a story. My friend had talked to his brother on the phone while my friend was on deployment. And my friend had explained to his brother in no uncertain terms the situation that my friend was in. The enemy was extremely hostile, the battlefield was chaotic, the attacks were frequent and furious. It was violence that my friend had not experienced before.
This video be sponsored.
I'm gonna head out. Yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys later.